thank you for joining me for this 15-part training series on John Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. I think you're going to enjoy this. It'll be one chapter at a time, so stay tuned. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Dave Henning. Today I want to share with you a complimentary training on John C. Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Live them and reach your potential. But before I get into that, I want to share with you that if you'll watch until the end of this very short training, I have a very special offer for you to get a free video on how to market your business online. So watch for that at the end of my presentation. But for now, I want to share with you just chapter 1 of John's wonderful book. And this chapter is called The Law of Intentionality. Growth doesn't just happen. Life is now in session. The question is, are you present? So here's the question to ponder that is the beginning of this book. Do you have a plan for your personal growth? Let me introduce you right now to my dear friend, John Maxwell, who I've known for over 30 years, as he explains why he wrote this book.
I'm very excited about my new book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. This is something I'm very passionate about. For 35 years, I've been on a personal growth plan, and I've had people continually ask me, John, how do I grow? That's why I finally wrote the 15 Laws of Growth book. It helps people know how to start growing, how to keep growing, because what I've learned and what I've discovered is that growth is happiness, and when we grow ourselves, everything around us begins to grow also.
So back to that question, do you have a plan for your personal growth? John was asked that question over a lunch meeting at a Holiday Inn that he went to on a speaking event with a man named Kurt Kampmeyer, who was asking John that question. It was a question that John said would change his life. And here's John's answer. I fumbled for answers. I list my accomplishments from previous 3 years. I talked about how hard I had worked. I outlined my goals. I explained things I was doing to reach more people. All of my answers were based on activity, not on improving. Finally, I had to admit it. I had no plan to become better. But he did have a strategy, and it was hard work. He hoped that would do the trick. However, he realized soon that would not cut it for him. So how do you get better at what you do? How do you improve your relationships? How do you gain more depth and wisdom as a person? How do you gain insight? How do you overcome obstacles? Work harder? Work longer? Wait for things to get better? That conversation at that Holiday Inn restaurant showed John that he had been given the opportunity to move up in his career. Think about this. Think about being offered the top leadership job in the premier location in your company. What would you do? John realized right away that he was way over his head, and he knew that if he didn't rise to the occasion, he would certainly fail in a big way. So Kurt was this salesman. He was selling this growth kit. It was a year-long plan with materials designed to help a person grow. He slid the brochure across the table to John, and this was a long time ago, and so that price of $799 was huge. At that time, it was nearly a month's salary for him. That's how long ago it was. So John puts in his book a quote from James Allen from the book As a Man Thinketh. Allen wrote, "People are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They are therefore remaining bound." Well, John couldn't afford it at the time. He talked it over his wife, and they scrimped for several months, put the money together, and he bought the plan. So the law of intentionality, that's what we're going to talk about. Are you intentional about your personal growth? Growth doesn't just happen. So I'm asking you again, do you have a plan to grow? Growth is not natural. Here's the growth gaps we want to discuss today. There's the assumption gap. I will automatically grow. The knowledge gap, the timing gap, the mistake gap. And there's more. So what about this assumption gap? Of course, when we're children, our bodies grow automatically. I don't know about you, but my grandparents had a line on the back of their door that all of us kids, all of us grandkids, we'd mark how tall we are every year and put the number of feet and inches, and the next year we could see exactly how much we had grown. Both of my brothers outgrew me. I was kind of the runt of the litter. Kind of on my mother's side. My dad was 6'6", and my mother was 4'11". So imagine, I'm the short guy in the group. But we do grow as a child automatically over the years. But it's different when it comes to our personal growth. It's kind of like the old Charles Schulz Peanuts comic strip, where Charlie Brown once said, "I think I've discovered the secret of life. You just hang around until you get used to it." Well, the problem is we don't improve by simply living. We really need to be intentional about it. Now, some of you know that I'm an old rock and roll disc jockey. I've worked at 10 radio stations across the United States as a talk show host and an announcer and so forth. And one of my favorite acts out of New Jersey is Bruce Springsteen. And Springsteen said, "A time comes when you need to stop waiting for the man you want to become and start being the man you want to be." Let's face it, nobody improved by accident. Personal growth does not just happen on its own. There's no special vitamins you can take. And once you're done with your formal education, you must take complete ownership of the growth process because no one else is going to do it for you. So then there's the knowledge gap. I don't know how to grow. So interestingly, after John discovered this opportunity to get this growth kit, he started talking to everyone he knew and asked the exact same question to his friends and colleagues. Do you have a growth plan? He was hoping that someone had figured it out and he could simply learn from them. Well, guess what? Not even one person said yes. Nobody in his world had planned for growing and improving. He didn't know how to grow. I didn't know how to grow years ago, and neither did they. Many people learn from the school of hard knocks. You might have heard people say this. It's difficult experiences. They learn the hard way, and sometimes they change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. So the lessons that we learn are rather random when you think about it, or difficult. It's like John once said, I got problems, you got problems, all God's children got problems. So it's much better to plan your growth intentionally. You decide where you need or want to grow. You choose what you'll learn, and you'll follow through with discipline, going at a place that you set. So after talking to his wife, and he finally was business. This is the age before credit cards, by the way. He finally put together the $799. John was about to invest in himself. And if you look back at his career, that $799 was really, quite frankly, peanuts compared to what he gained from that throughout his life and where he finally ended up and is continuing to grow, continuing to teach, continuing to help people worldwide as the number one leadership guru according to Forbes magazine and Inc. 500. So he said, "You can't imagine my excitement as I opened up the growth kit and started to flip through the 5 areas it covered. Attitude, goals, discipline, measurement, and consistency. I began to see growth opportunities everywhere. My world began to open up. I accomplished more. I learned more. I was able to lead and help others more. Other opportunities began to present themselves. Outside of my faith, the decision to grow has impacted my life more than any other." Well, what about this timing gap? It's just not the right time to begin. One of the riddles that John's father told him when he was a little boy goes like this. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 decided to jump off. How many are left? So the first time his dad told him this little riddle, John answered, 1. 1 frog was left. No, his father said, 5. Well, why? Because there's a difference between deciding and doing. Chew on that. Think about that for a while. Did you get it? That was the point that his father often drove home with him and his family. What great accomplishments we'd have in this world if everybody had done what they intended to do. You see, most people don't act as quickly as they should on things. They find themselves subject to the law of diminishing intent, which says the longer you wait to do something you should do now, the greater the odds that you will never actually do it. So you may be under a similar personal or professional pressure right now. If you are, you're probably anxious to start growing and developing. But what if you're not? Well, now is the time to start growing. The reality is that you will never get much done unless you go ahead and do it before you're ready. Have you ever thought about that? If you're not already intentionally growing, you need to get started today. And then there's the mistake gap. I'm afraid of making mistakes. Been there, done that. So, growing, hey, look, it can be a messy business, right? So, my older brother, I was a great fan of him. He was always an encourager. He sent me a lot of books to read down through the years, and several of them were by the great Robert H. Schuller. And Bob Schuller wrote one time, "What would you attempt to do if you knew you wouldn't fail?" Those words were very encouraging to me. It inspired John to write another book called Failing Forward because, see, we get stuck on being afraid of making a mistake. And that is a mistake in itself because mistakes are really learning lessons in disguise. If you want to grow, you need to get over any fear that you have of making mistakes. I like what author and professor Warren Bennis says. He says a mistake is simply another way of doing things. To become intentional about growing, expect to make mistakes every day and welcome them as a sign that you are moving in the right direction. And then what about the perfection gap? I have to find the best way before I start. Oh, I know who you are out there. Oh, yes. You don't want to start till you've examined it up, down, sideways, in every way, and you think you can find the best way to doing what you want to do to get into your growth plan. Well, the problem with that is what John discovered is that he had it backwards. To get started, if I wanted to find the best way, it'd be kind of like driving your automobile down a dark road late at night that doesn't have any lighting along the way. You'd like to be able to see where you're going and get around those curves and down the road, but you're not going to see the whole route before you begin. But you've got to begin. You've got to put the car in drive, step on the gas, and move forward. You see the road progressively. As you move forward, a little more of the road is revealed to you. If you want to see more of the way, then you just simply have to get moving and forget about being perfect because you never will. And then there's the inspiration gap. Oh, I've been here. I just don't feel like doing it. Well, many years ago, John was stuck in a doctor's office waiting for an appointment, and it was before smartphones and tablets. But if you're like me, I sit there and check my email while I'm in the dentist office or doctor's office, or I'll send some text messages or contact some people or read something. And as John was sitting there in his situation, he picked up a medical journal on the coffee table full of magazines. He was all done doing all the work he could get done while waiting. And he flipped through this medical journal and found the interesting article that goes like this. This is way before Nike coined this phrase. Just do it. We hear it almost every day. Sigh, sigh, sigh. I just can't get myself motivated to, let's say, lose weight, test my blood sugar, etc. And we hear an equal number of sighs from diabetes educators who can't get their patients motivated to do the right things for their diabetes and health. We have news for you. Motivation is not going to strike you like lightning. And motivation is not something that will, say, someone else can give you, like your nurse, your doctor, your family member. They can't force it on you. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. And that word trap rhymes with another word. Forget motivation. Just do it. Exercise, lose weight, test your blood sugar, or whatever. Do it without motivation, and then guess what? After you start doing the thing, that's when the motivation comes and makes it easy for you to keep on doing it. Motivation is like love and happiness. It's a byproduct. When you are actively engaged in doing something, it sneaks up and zaps you when you least expect it. As Harvard psychologist Jerome Bruner says, you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than feel yourself into action. So act. Whatever it is you know you should do, just do it. In high school, my brother was a varsity sports expert on everything: basketball, baseball, soccer. I was the book nerd who was very uncoordinated, who had this brilliant idea I should follow in the steps of my big brother. So after discovering that I was going to get cut from every team except cross country, I think I was the Forrest Gump of my cross-country team. Run, Forrest, run. And I got into enjoying it. It wasn't fun, really, practicing running 5 miles every afternoon after school, but I got used to it. But the interesting thing is, in competition with other schools around the county, I learned this very unique phrase called getting your second wind. What do I mean by that? That once I began doing something that I really didn't want to do and got running through the trails and through the woods in competition with the other runners and with my own team, somewhere along the way I'd get this second wind. There was just a wind of encouragement and enthusiasm and motivation that kept me going strong to finish the race. And I did, I will say, win a few ribbons here and there. So when this man suggested to John Maxwell that he needed to be intentional about growing, he had 1,000 reasons not to do it. Like probably you have. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the experience. And so on and so forth. But he did have one reason to do it. He believed he should do it because he hoped it would make a difference. And it most certainly did. Let me tell you something. If you're listening to me today, you may not feel inspired to aggressively pursue a growth plan if you haven't started yet. So please trust me that the growing far outweighs the reasons to not start growing. So make a commitment to yourself to start and stick with it for at least 12 months. What about the comparison gap? Others are better than me. Oh, I felt this way as a young man. I had some discouraging things happen to me, and I wasn't exactly enthusiastic about comparing myself with other people. John had this experience going to a leadership meeting in Orlando years ago, and everyone there were, as he thought, way ahead of him. He was very intimidated by these people. They were more qualified than him. And despite that, he went anyway, and he was encouraged. Why was he encouraged? Because John discovered that great men and women are willing to share their ideas. And he was learning so much. You can learn only if others are ahead of you. It's kind of like I've been told, if you're going to play sports, like I like to golf, or I used to play tennis or volleyball, softball, it's always good to play with someone that is better than you. There's something about that that's very helpful. And that's what John learned when going to these seminars, to investing in himself, taking the time, spending a little money, showing up at these events. I am very blessed to have heard the great late Zig Ziglar many times over in many arena conferences with some incredible speakers. I've had the privilege of hearing Brian Tracy and late great Jim Rohn, as well as some people that I've heard more recently, like Les Brown and Tony Robbins. I saw in Denver one time. It's worth it. It's worth the investment, and you always come back with some gold nuggets that'll help you move your life along, especially in the area of personal and professional growth. So, John had to get over this comparison gap. Stop comparing yourself to others. Compare yourself to yourself and set goals that you can meet and exceed yourself. And then there's the expectation gap. I thought it would be easier than this. What a surprise. No, it is not. John thought, well, I wonder how long this is going to take. Maybe a year? No, it turned out to be a lifetime, as it is with me. I don't know of any successful person who thinks that growth comes quickly and climbing to the top is very easy. It just doesn't happen. People create their own luck. If you believe in luck, here's the formula. Preparation, in other words, growth, plus attitude, plus opportunity, plus action, in other words, doing something about it, equals luck. Did you get the picture? It all starts with preparation, and that takes time. But here's the best news. As Jim Rohn once said, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. If you want to reach your goals and fulfill your potential, become intentional about your personal growth. It will change your life. There it is, John said. If Rome wasn't built in a day, how long are you willing to give yourself? So you need to transition to intentional growth. So ask the big questions now. Where do you want to go in life? What direction do you want to go? What's the farthest you can imagine going? How long will it take? Years ago, John went to a seminar at the University of Dayton in Ohio, and the speaker was a man named W. Clement Stone. He spoke on the subject of having a sense of urgency. Stone happened to be a business tycoon. He actually started his insurance agency years and years ago in Chicago with $100 in his pocket and built it up to a mega fortune in the insurance industry, influencing lives everywhere around the United States. His session was entitled Do It Now, and one of the things he told that group that day was, before you go to bed every night, say, do it now 50 times. At the end of the day, before you go to sleep, the last thing you should say is, do it now 50 times. Now that seems kind of tedious, but guess what? It creates a sense of urgency. The greatest danger you face in this moment is the idea that you will make intentional growth a priority later. Don't fall into that trap. Here's an article by someone named Jennifer Reed in Success. She wrote, can there be a more insidious word, later? As in, I'll do it later. Or later I'll have time to write that book that's been on my mind for the past 5 years. Or I need to straighten out my finances. I'll do that later. Later is one of those dream killers, one of the countless obstacles we put up to derail our chance of success. The diet that starts tomorrow, the job hunt that happens eventually, and the pursuit of life dreams that begin someday combined with other self-imposed roadblocks and lock us up on autopilot. Why do we say this to ourselves anyway? Why don't we take action now? Let's face it, the familiar is easy. The uncharted path is lined with uncertainty. Keep taking more steps. Pick a resource that will help you grow and begin to learn from it today. Because guess what you're going to be faced with just like everybody else in this world? Do it now. No, really. Do it now. But here's what people run into, right? The fear factor. Fear of failure. Fear of trading security for the unknown. Fear of being overextended on resources. Fear of what will my friends think? What will my family think? Which of these fears impacts you? For me, it was the last one, alienating my peers. John says, by nature, I'm a people pleaser. I want everyone to like me. Well, what's that going to do? We all have fears. But the good news is we also have faith. So which emotion are you going to allow to be stronger? The fear of failure, fear of trading security for the unknown, fear of being overextended on resources, fear of what are other people going to think about me, fear of pushing friends and family and pushing others away. So, is your emotion stronger, the desire to change and grow, or one of these fears? Well, may I suggest that you change from accidental to intentional growth. Look at this chart. This is very interesting. Accidental growth says, I plan to start tomorrow. Intentional growth says, I insist on starting now. Accidental growth waits for growth to come. Intentional growth takes responsibility to grow. On the left, learns only from their mistakes. on the right learns before mistakes, or learns from the mistake of others, which is even better. Depends on good luck or relies on hard work. Quits early and often, or perseveres long and hard. Falls into bad habits, or fights for good habits. Talks big, or follows through. Plays it safe, or takes risks. People tend to get into ruts in life. Have you ever been in a rut? Kind of like professional baseball players that get into a batting slump. 1,000 is a good batting average. It's like the perfect score, but if a batter gets even 3 out of 10 hits, that's considered fantastic. And he's missing 7 out of 10 hits. Did you know that Babe Ruth actually had more strikeouts than home runs, but yet he's remembered for all of his home runs that he had? Why? Because he took risk. He followed through. He persevered long and hard. He relied on hard work. And he took responsibility to be the best player he could be in his era. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "One philosophy is not best expressed in words. It is expressed in the choice one makes. In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. The process never ends until we die, and the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility. If you want to reach your potential, you must go out of your way to seize growth opportunities." Remember Robin Williams in the movie Dead Poets Society? That little speech he had with his students, with the boys, "Carpe diem," seize the day. Robin Williams' line in that movie, which lasts forever, is, "Make your life extraordinary. Extraordinary. Extraordinary." How about you? What's your plan? Do you have a plan for personal growth? Many people underestimate the unimportance of nearly everything in their lives. They get distracted. As a result, they put growth on the back burner, and if they do grow, it happens accidentally instead of intentionally. Take a look at your calendar for the next 12 months. How much time have you specifically scheduled for personal growth? If you're like most people, your answer will be none. Or you may have planned to attend one event in the coming year. That's not going to cut it. Rework your calendar so you have an appointment with yourself for personal growth every day, 5 days a week, 50 days a year. You might be thinking, "What? I don't have time for that." That's probably true. Do it anyway. If you want to succeed, you need to do whatever it takes. Get up an hour early, stay up an hour later. Give up your lunch hour, put in extra time on the weekends. If you don't, you'll have to prepare to give up your dreams and any hope of reaching your potential. So start now. There's a poet and a writer and an author from New England, and this is one of the lines I really don't like that he once wrote. I'm talking about Henry David Thoreau. Is this you? I hope not. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Isn't that a horrible thought? You must strive to find your own voice, because the longer you wait, the less likely you are to find it. Get up off that couch, turn off the TV, read a book, watch some inspirational videos on YouTube. I just saw Grant Cardone in Nashville at a convention a couple weeks ago, and what an inspiration to hear that man speak and share his values and how to prosper, how to build your business, how to invest in yourself. The purpose of education is to learn to think for yourself. You spend a lot of money on college, graduate school, or whatever. Guess what? That was just the beginning, not the end. When you graduate, when you get that certificate, that's just the beginning of the rest of your life. The purpose of that education is so you could learn how to think for yourself. I like Robert Frost. He said this, "Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference." That is the chapter on the law of intentionality from John Maxwell's book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. You can't fall if you don't climb, but there is no joy in living your whole life on the ground. So I would share with you to go ahead and register to get my free video on how to build an online internet business. Just go to davehenningonline.com. That's DAVEHENNING online.com and get your free gift from me. Thanks for watching. See you next time.